Jan. So I would like to welcome everyone to today's L&D Shakers ThoughtLab. I'm so glad that you all could join us today. For those of you who are new, I would like to just quickly share about our community. L&D Shakers is a community for people who care deeply about learning and development, facilitation, and creating better workplaces. So we're bringing L&D professionals, facilitators, leaders, just curious humans that want to learn from each other. We hope that this is going to be a go-to place where we can inspire each other, learn from each other, and grow together. So this particular format is designed to be interactive. So please share your opinions, your questions, your thoughts, because it's just going to make the session better. Depending where you are, maybe there's an L&D Shaker community in your city, because we are now in so many cities all around the world, but also we have so many of these online events, so anybody can join. And for today's session, it's a really exciting one. You already met Jan Keck. He is driven by the simple belief that real deep connection beats small talk. So he believes, you can warm up a meeting without some kind of cheesy activities, and you can build trust slowly and facilitate like a really good conversation. He's the author of the Campfire Method, and he will share with us different approaches today about how can we, break the ice. So yes, I think that's it. I think, Jan, I'm gonna give it back to you.
Thank you so much, Barbara. And hello, everybody else that has joined us. Thanks for the few people who have their cameras on already. Thank you, Lila, did I pronounce your name correctly, Lila? For waving back at me. Nice. One thing that I want to say up front is that I do a lot of online sessions, and maybe you do too. Maybe you are on my seat sometimes where you run a training or a program. And if you've ever noticed that when you deliver something, it feels like you're sending a lot of energy in one direction. And when you do that for a long time, you kind of feel drained at the end. I actually would love to give you a couple of ways you can send me some energy, so this becomes a little exchange. And you can do that by engaging in the chat, like you've already done so beautifully at the first few minutes, by sending any reactions through the reaction button, or by maybe raising your hand and asking a question or answering a question that I'm asking. And if we do that, I think this will be a super engaging and memorable lesson, a memorable session, not lesson. I want to start with asking you a question that you can then go in the chat and practice this. Do you know what this activity is called? Share your name and a fact. I'm already giving you lots of clues here. It's a 3-letter word that I'm looking for. All right. Esther was there first, and then Lori and Stefan and Luca and everybody else. It is, of course, a fun fact. If you want to show your hand or raise your hand if you've done this activity before. For me, this was an activity that I was introduced to when I was about to become a camp counselor at summer camp. I was a teenager, just at the age where I wasn't allowed to be a camper or participant anymore, and wanted to become a counselor. So I was there with this whole group of new people that I haven't met before. And I still remember there were about 30 people of us standing in this room on a Saturday afternoon. And the leader said, okay, let's introduce ourselves. Everybody say something fun about yourself, and we're going to go around the room. There were 30 people. And if you've already doing the math, like this took quite some time until we got around the circle. But at that time, I was just concerned with what I'm going to say. What I'm going to say that makes me not sound boring, because I wanted to feel interesting, look interesting to the new people that I'm just meeting. And I was trying to figure out, should I say that I'm learning to play the guitar? But I mean, if you've ever been to a summer camp, everybody knows how to play guitar, so not really a good way to stand out. I was thinking of, should I say that I'm collecting these Kinder Surprise figurines? I don't know if you remember the Kinder Surprise eggs. I actually have some here on my desk, some happy hippos, if you remember those. But at that point, I thought maybe this is too weird. Again, the other people are adults. Now I'm not a kid anymore. I should share something a little bit better. And as my turn was getting closer and I could see each person share something interesting, my heart would beat a lot faster. My throat would close up. And I don't remember what I said. I just remembered that feeling of being in the spotlight was so uncomfortable. I wanted it to move on to the next person as quickly as possible. And as soon as it did, my shoulders would drop. I would sigh a huge sigh of relief. Finally, this moment is over. And at the end of the activity, I remembered not a single person's name or their fun fact because I was not listening to anyone and anything that anybody else has said. And that is maybe my first memory of doing a icebreaker. And if we're talking about icebreakers today, I think we should define what it is, because everybody has a slightly different understanding of it. So if we're thinking of an icebreaker, I want us today to talk about the activities or games that are supposed to break down social barriers, make participants feel more comfortable and open to participate. And I think the part that I want to highlight here is the supposed, because I have realized that for some people, and that included me in my little story, the activity does exactly the opposite. It didn't help break down social barriers. It made me feel less comfortable being there in the group because it put me on the spot before I felt ready to. And I think in every group, we have some people that might feel that way. And if we can design our sessions in a way that includes everyone, then I think that's worth keeping in mind when we're creating trainings, workshops, anytime we bring groups together. So that's my promise today, to give you some specific things you can do, but also dig a little bit more into, so what's the actual challenge here? And I give you a bit of an overview of what we'll cover today. We're going to start with a group activity that will help us break the ice, and we'll actually experience what that feels like. So we know the difference to the alternative that I'm suggesting later. There will be some small group conversations, and I'm going to really encourage you to participate in the breakout rooms if you can. If you have your camera still off, that's totally okay while you're listening. If you can turn that on for the breakout rooms, that would be the best for the other people that are there and for you to feel a little bit more connected to this amazing global community that Barbara talked about. And then I want to give you something specifically for the first 5 minutes. The first 5 minutes of any session, any training, like they're supposed to set the tone, right? And I think there's something that we unconsciously do that makes people multitask and not pay attention and disengage in our sessions. So I want to give you some alternative ways to start a session. And at the very end, and this is going to be a bit of an experiment, I would love to do a challenge. I would love to invite you to take a risk together and see what happens. And this might either work perfectly, beautifully, or we will have a huge lesson learned by the end. So either way, I think it's going to be a win for us. Does that sound like a good plan? If you have your cameras on, you can just nod your head. You can give me thumbs up. You can click the reaction buttons, use the chat, all of the above. Amazing. I'm seeing we're good to get started. So when you think of icebreaker activities, maybe you've even Googled this before or asked a AI chatbot before, hey, what's the best icebreaker activity? Can anybody guess what comes up? And I'll invite you to guess and not go to ask your favorite AI chatbot or Google right now to check what the answer is. What do you think is the top activity? Okay, we're starting with fun fact. We've already talked about that one, and maybe that's the one that comes up on the top. Favorite movie, Two Truths and One Lie. Ooh, Hannah has a reaction to Two Truths and One Lie. The first job depends on the group, right? Depends on the group. Kate is a really good answer, but Google doesn't ask you who your group is when they give you the answer. Neither do most of the AI chatbots. So the correct answer is in there already twice. It is Two Truths and One Lie. And I thought to really experience why maybe Hannah has the same or a similar reaction to I when I hear this, we will try it out. And I prepared 3 facts. If you've never played this activity, this is how it works. I will share 3 facts, and your job will be to guess which one is the lie. So 2 things that I'm going to share are true, and 1 is the lie. And after I shared all 3 of them, I'm going to ask you in the chat to just type in A, B, or C. Make sense? All right. Fact A, I once took my cat on a canoe camping trip. Fact B, I directed a documentary about illegal backyard chickens. Or fact C, did I speak at TEDx Toronto in 2018? Type in your guess right now, A, B, or C. Which one do you think is the lie? Okay, we have votes for A, B, and C. That is great. And I'm just checking. I think B might be the most voted answer, maybe followed by A. All right. Let me reveal what is the truth. And I did bring photographic evidence. So you also believe me when I say that I did take my cat on a canoe camping trip. He had a little life vest. It was in Canada when we lived there, and he loved it. He loved sleeping in the tent, in the sleeping bag with me, and did not want me to pack the tent back up. So when we were leaving, he was sitting on top of everything, on the sleeping mat, on the tent. He's like, no, I want to stay here. And that is the first truth. What is the other one? The other one is, again, I have photographic evidence. I did direct a documentary in Toronto, Canada. It's illegal to have chickens in your backyard if you live inside the city. And I thought this was ridiculous and made this documentary / mockumentary about it, where I hired actors that became the chicken police that were busting down people's doors, asking where they're hiding their chickens, trying to arrest them. Of course, it was not really the case that there was a chicken police, but people could, like neighbors could call the city, and then the city comes and gives you a fine or tells you to get rid of the chickens. So there's a lot of people who bribe their neighbors with free eggs. Anyway, second truth, which means the lie, is I did not speak at TEDx Toronto in 2018. I did speak at TEDx Calgary in 2020, and just recently again here in Freiburg in Germany. So I kind of misled you slightly with my third fact that was in this case a lie. So now we've done 1 round. I think we should do at least 1 or 2 more to really get a sense of what happens in this game. And for this, I'm going to see if there's anybody who might have some 3 things ready to go. In that case, put your hand up. And if not, I might just pick a random person that at least has been engaging somewhere in the chat or on the screen. Let's see. I even though we're online, I can feel people are not making eye contact with me. Isn't that interesting? Well, we're gonna pause right here because we're not actually going to play through this. But I would invite you to think of these 2 questions, and feel free to maybe take some notes if you want to write them on a piece of paper, or a sticky note what happened in your body in the moment that we were going to play this. Any stories or any thoughts that came up in your mind. And Lori has already shared something in the chat. So for right now, I would love to invite you to just write it down for yourself, because I want you to connect with each other in a breakout room and go a little bit deeper on this question in a moment. So for right now, just think of your own answer. Okay, and thanks for the people who are sharing it in the chat already. You don't need to share it in the chat yet, but if you want to, you're welcome to post it in there as well. Because what I would love to do is, like I said, invite you to share with someone in a breakout room. When I open up the breakout rooms, there will be a button that you can accept. So if you are able to chat, if your mic is working, just accept it. If you'd rather stay in the main room and connect with maybe the people who are here, or if you just can't chat right now, that's totally okay as well. I might just need a moment to reshuffle to make sure every group has enough people that are able to talk. I'm going to give you 5 minutes for this. And I'm going to put the instructions in the chat as well, because in addition to sharing what you've wrote down, I would love for you to share what, if we actually had played this, would have been challenging for you. Like, what about the activity, the way I facilitated it, the way I introduced it would have made it challenging for you? Does that sound clear? You can give me a quick feedback. All right. I'm going to put the breakout rooms for 5 minutes. So feel free to briefly introduce yourself and then jump into the question. There's going to be groups of 3 or 4 if the math works out. And I think you should see an invitation right now. Oh, sorry, no, we pressed the button at the same time. I'm very curious what came out of your breakout room conversations. If there's anybody who would like to unmute, click the raise hand button or wave into your camera. If not, you can also use the chat. Belinda, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll break the ice, so to speak. I thought in 5 words, what came up for our team was introverts are not going to like that exercise. They have to think on the spot. Just not good enough. Efficiency, if they've got an hour of a very, very busy corporate environment, they're not going to want to waffle. Competition, it feels very competitive. Do I need to be more exciting than the person next to me? There may be a sense of oversharing from some people, just not appropriate. And then context dependent. Small friend groups, great. If you've got a small team that's very familiar, but a large group who doesn't know each other, meaningless.
Yeah, wow, that's a really great list. Thank you for collecting that with your group.
It's a great conversation.
Yeah, I love it. So now I'm curious, is there anybody who would like to add something, or was this list already sufficient? Any other things that you talked about in your groups? I'm seeing also some messages in the chat. Rowan says, we concluded that icebreaker activities are often more distracting than helpful. Too much time spent worrying about your own contribution than afterwards analyzing it. Yeah. From my opening story, I can very much relate to that.
Can I add something? Sorry to jump in like this, bit off camera, feeling a bit sick. To me, what was missing mainly was the idea like, okay, why are we doing this now? In a sense, thinking coming from a corporate background, for some topics it would make sense. For others, like why why should I care about your cat? Although I love the fact that you took your cat canoeing, but I just imagine how my colleagues would react.
Yes, thank you so much for speaking about this. There was well, I would say in today's session, it was borderline related to the topic because we're talking about
Yeah.
icebreakers, right?
But overall, in general, in different
yeah,
topics.
but take that activity to any other session. Does it actually connect? That's the question. Yeah, I think we collected all of the things that I had on my list here, because I actually think that this icebreaker or other icebreakers as well are breaking more than just the ice because, and we heard this, it's competitive. And I'm always joking, if with two truths and one lie, we reward the person who's the best liar. But maybe the goal was to build trust. Lying and building trust are the complete opposite end of what we want to accomplish. So it's competitive. I didn't give you time to reflect, right? Same as in my example with the fun facts. If you're just listening to someone else, you can't also think of your own answers. And rather than having to come up with one fun fact, here you have to come up with 3, and one of them has to be a lie, and then you need to deliver it in a way that people don't notice right away. So it's a lot of workload that you have to do. I think somebody mentioned that as well, the idea of you have to be in the spotlight. I think, Belinda, you said introverts wouldn't like this. I call myself a people-loving introvert and a recovering shy person. So I know exactly what it feels like when you have to be in the spotlight, if it's not a choice, and especially if it's early on where you haven't built trust with the other people there, right? If I can avoid that, at least in the beginning, I would always find ways where people opt in rather than being forced. Here, that's what we just talked about, not relevant to the session. And I think that's also why a lot of participants might say, okay, doing icebreakers, this is just a waste of time. Like, why are we doing this silly game when we have other things to talk about, more important work to get done, right? I think we've all heard something like that. So the question with icebreakers, if so many people have reasons against them, becomes, so why are we doing them in the first place? Like, is there still a reason to have something like an icebreaker? And at this point, I spend a lot of time since I started writing my book exactly 3 years and 1 week ago. I asked myself, so what's actually frozen? Like, if we think of the ice that needs to be broken, where does that ice come from? Like, what is it? What's the metaphor here? And where I landed is that it's not that a group is frozen together in ice, but each individual has these protective layers of ice around themselves. And based on their past experiences with maybe icebreakers, with maybe opening up to groups, they have added more of these layers of armor around them, and therefore it takes much longer to get inside or to get outside for the participants. And if I then imagine the facilitator coming in, wanting to, or trainer, and wanting to break the ice with a big sledgehammer, trying to free people while hitting on the ice, it's very easy to hurt people by accident. Again, good intentions. I want to free people, but maybe it's too fast for some people. And it's also a very violent image in my mind, which is exactly why I started thinking not of breaking the ice, but how can we build a campfire that melts the ice instead? Because when we melt ice, number one, it's a gradual process. Like, as somebody who might be frozen stiff in ice, the melting is not very painful. There's not a risk of getting hurt as much. Number two, I actually imagine me building this campfire in the middle of the room or in the middle of the group, and then invite everyone to step closer. And when they're ready, they will take that step themselves and they will get their ice melted when they're still hesitant, they might still linger in the back, but at one point, hopefully they will kind of inch closer. So by the end, we'll all be sitting around the campfire. And that's been kind of the visual that I like to create, that I've been calling the campfire method. That is not reliant on one single activity that I do at the beginning of a session that then allows me to do all of this, like creating trust, creating connection, helping people feel safe. All of these things take time, and I don't think we can rush these things because, and I'm bringing in my little prop here. I have a little log that always lives on the side of my desk. It also smells really nice. If this was the very first thing I tried to light, what would happen? This is a question to the campers and the people who might have started a fire on their barbecue before, right? Esther is saying not much, nada, right? Because this is way too big. So ideally, I would start lighting, I don't know, I have a box of matches here. Would light my match and then maybe some paper, and then I add my little sticks on it, my kindling. And at the end, once the fire is going, I can put that big log back on the fire. And to me, this big log represents the biggest risk participants have to take in a session. So you might be asking yourself, so what does that actually mean? Well, it's different for everybody. So if you think of a session that you've run recently, a training that you've run, what would you say is the biggest risk people had to take? Go to the chat and let me know what are some examples of something that you would say was the riskiest thing people had to do. Being vulnerable, doing a dance in the middle of a circle. Right. Again, it can be very, very different for each person. Let's see what else is coming. Showing a part of yourself. Sharing thoughts with each other. Yeah, vulnerability showing up again. Sharing an opinion. Being in the spotlight, being judged, showing too much. Yeah. Take a moment and think of somebody who might be in your session that usually is very quiet, not participating as much. Do you think there's something even smaller that would be a big log, a big risk for them? Yeah, afraid that they don't know enough. Just joining the session itself could be a risk, right? Speaking a foreign language, speaking in front of people. Yeah. Switching on the camera. Maybe even like raising your hand because you have a question, because you didn't understand something, or raising your hand to contribute. Right? There's a lot of different types of risks for different people that participants have to take. And my idea, my suggestion here is, let's try not to start with the bigger risks, but layer it kind of step by step, the same way we build a campfire. So the very first thing we ask our participants to do should be optional, should be easy, should make them feel like, oh yes, I can do it. And then once they did that, we can kind of see where the group is and maybe go to the next step. And one of these things happens right at the beginning. And that's actually the part that I would love to dive a little bit more specifically on one of the chapters that I wrote about in the book, which happens in the first few moments. The first few moments really set the tone. Yet there is a certain sentence that I'm hoping to eliminate from people's vocabulary that usually gets said. I've said it many times. Maybe you've said it before. I'm pretty sure you've heard it before. That does the exact opposite of what you hope it does. Can anybody complete this sentence? Here's the first part. Let's just wait. Let's just wait. I'm just waiting right now. Let's see what happens in the chat, or if somebody would like to unmute, you can do that as well. Let's just wait for everyone to finish, for everyone else to join, a few minutes, and see if anybody else joins, till everybody shares, finishes, joins. Yes, I think you're all on the right track, right? It's the idea we have to wait until other people are here, until everybody has arrived before we officially get started. And I think there's a few problems with this. Can anybody tell me what it feels like? Like if you put yourself in the shoes of a participant, and you might have rushed to get into a meeting room or maybe to log in, and then this is the first thing that you hear. Let's just wait until everyone has arrived. Yes, Stefan and Lena, it feels disrespectful. It's punishing the people who arrive on time. Right. Right, the people who are not significant. It makes people feel unimportant. And Jenny, I think you're talking about the next problem. People start doing something else in the meantime. If you have your camera on, I'm going to invite you to actually do the thing you would do. If I said, let's just wait until everybody's here. If you don't have your camera on, feel free to write your answer in the chat. What would you do if this was the thing in the first few minutes? Okay, Sylvia is on her phone. Very good. Go to the kitchen, get food. Check the other tabs. Right? Cooking. Is there anybody who would maybe reply to an email? I think that's always a kind of a go-to. People go to their inbox. Yeah, like Karen is saying, checking emails, do work, respond to Teams messages. And then once everybody's here and you try to get the attention back, what happens? Of course, people are in the middle of their email. Maybe they're not even here anymore because they went to grab coffee. Now you actually want to get started and people are not there. And then I think the challenging thing that happens for the rest of the session is you kind of set the expectations that it's okay to multitask. And I often get people telling me that my biggest challenge in online sessions specifically is that people are not really present. They're doing other things. Well, if you start the session with allowing them to do it, I think that's one of the issues why it might be hard to get them away from that. There is some really interesting research that talks about what people do during meetings. And this is what they did. 1 in 3 people admit that they're checking social media or they're texting during meetings. 24% are online shopping. 19% watch TV. And 12% take a nap. And the challenging thing when I look at these statistics is always, who did they actually ask? They asked 4,000 adults in the US and Canada, so North America, but it was mostly business owners, managers, CEOs, and presidents. So not even the employees. This was like the people in leadership positions. And I really hope that the people taking a nap was also in an online session and not at an in-person meeting, because I don't know if you could ever come back from having somebody fall asleep in a training or a session. But this really shows that we do other things in sessions. And if we start with saying, let's just wait until everybody's here, we're going to give people the permission to check emails, surf social media. Then when we try to get their attention to start, Of course, it's no wonder that when we, oh, now I'm there twice, when you ask a question, that you hear crickets. And ideally, this should look like this, where when you start on time, then when later you ask a question, people are ready to engage. And this, at the very beginning, is the difference, those first few minutes. So what can we do? And maybe you're already doing something in those first few minutes that is not saying, let's just wait until everybody's here. And I would actually love to hear somebody else's voice if anybody's open to share an idea, something that you do in the first few minutes. Like if you do sessions in person, this would be the moment the first person walks in the room. Like, tell us what happens. And you're welcome to also share in the chat, but if you would like to unmute, raise your hand, wave in the camera. Stefan shared a couple of questions. How was your weekend? What's going on? What was their day like? How they feel? What's their energy right now? Nice. Text in the chat where you're zooming in from. Ask for one word or emoji to describe how they're feeling about today's sessions. Okay, so there are already some ideas there. That's great. Any others? Small talk and storytelling. Ask what they would like to learn or practice. Discuss something everyone who came late will be sad to have missed. In online trainings, I asked them to share in the chat their name, team, and something they are expecting or most excited about from the session. All right. I also see some of the feedback that you gave earlier of it feeling unrelated to the session, either applying to some of those questions or actually being something that you can relate to any of the session, like what you're most excited about from the session, right? That is a question that works every time and is always related. Belinda makes a statement about what I notice about them. You are the first to arrive, invites them to respond, and then build on that as others arrive. It helps people feel seen from the start. I love it. And maybe at this point, I will talk about one small challenge that I've noticed, and I'm curious if you've noticed this too. When we meet with one person, getting into this conversation and making people feel welcome and noticing things is often quite easy. Maybe not for everyone, but let's just say it's easy once you get the ball rolling. But then when the next person comes in, it, for me, always creates this little awkward moment of, I want to be present with the person I'm talking to, but I also want to be respectful to the new person that has arrived and acknowledge them for being there. And I often somehow am able to manage it and make them feel included and bring them in the conversation. And then to me, it feels like harmony again until the next person comes in. And I feel like I have to do the same thing again and again and again. So for those first few minutes, I'm actually now thinking of what's an activity I can design that I call a spark activity, or other people call an unofficial start activity, a rolling start, early engagement activity. There's different names for it that almost works without me, where I can take myself out of the middle of the conversation and get people to connect with each other, or at least have something they can do by themselves if they're not ready to connect with each other yet. So if we're thinking of the definition of this activity, here's what it should accomplish. So it's an informal activity, should be related to the session, and it begins immediately when the first participant enters the room. So in a way, it's almost an activity that needs to work solo and then also with more people coming in. And if I can make it that I don't need to explain it to every person, if it's either instructions are on a slide or it's self-explanatory, then that I don't risk getting caught in that small talk trap with people in the beginning. And then it should continue until the official program starts. So it's kind of bridging that first few minutes to when people are arriving. I have a few ideas that I want to share with you just as some inspiration of things you can do in person, that you can do online. And then I would love for you to think of an upcoming session and maybe pick one thing that you're going to try. So before I go to my examples, I would love to do a quick poll. Let's see. I think if you click the React button, do you all see the green check mark? Or maybe you can even send a thumbs up if that's what you're used to. I'm just curious, who here runs sessions in person? Maybe just give me a thumbs up or click the check mark or type a yes in the chat. All right, that's almost everyone. And also, I see hybrid and both, right? Because my follow-up question would have been, let me just clear all that feedback. If you want to click the check mark or the thumbs up right now, if you do in-person sessions. Okay, we're starting a little bit slower. Maybe about half, a little bit more than half. It's growing. So I'm just taking the information that you're sending me as almost everybody runs in-person and virtual sessions. So I was just curious if there's like one that is more than the other. Because the first example is actually one that you can do in person. And there's also tools that allow you to do that virtually. I'm like looking for my in-person prop. But that got put into my bag for an actual in-person session that I ran this week. So I will show you a picture instead. Image cards. These ones are the We Engage cards. I don't know if anybody here uses image cards in your sessions, but to me, that's often a really easy way how I can connect the activity to any topic. In this case, We Engage cards have different images on the front, like you can see the diver, the Lego, the desert, a bus, frames, a door, right? On the back, they all have quotes. So the way I usually would do it is if I have a session, like I did one this week, that was a presentation skills training. And I ask people to pick the one that reminds them of the feeling they get when they're in front of a group. And I don't think I can recognize some of the ones that were chosen by this group, but if I were to choose one from here right now, I could say, oh, I chose the one with underwater because I feel like I can't breathe because I'm so uncomfortable speaking in front of a group. Or one person could have maybe picked the Lego and said, oh, when I do a presentation, I have all my pieces and I'm kind of just going from one piece to the next, right? So they always come up with a reason. Usually this happens after you've already picked the image. And for challenging topics, to me, that's always easier to start with picking a card, picking something, and then finding the answer afterwards. So this is something you can use in person. There's other ones that also work online. One other tool that I like is called Climber cards, created by Amy Climber, like Climber, but without the B. If you type that in, Climber cards, you will find that, where people get a custom link and they can choose something on their device. And then for you as a facilitator, it shows up on a screen where you can see all of the cards that were selected. And the great thing there is, and with some other virtual platforms, you can already ask people to write a sentence of why they picked a card. So in person, I would invite people to connect with each other based on what they chose, but not force them. Like it's not a forced activity, but somebody who's maybe a little bit more quiet could still get some insights and connect to the session before everybody else gets here. Now, the next example works mostly virtual, and I feel like this is not new information for most of you. I think you all have at least participated in a word cloud, but again, to me, this is one activity that works for any topic. We did a version of this even at the beginning of today. What comes to mind when you hear the word icebreaker? In this case, I created a word cloud and larger words will just show up larger. And as more people are coming in, this is great to comment on how it's evolving. Kind of what are you seeing? What is the differences in words that are popping up? What is the similarities? Of course, you would not want to use a word cloud with a small group. If there's only 5 people and you have 5 words and there are 5 different words, it doesn't give you anything interesting to comment on. But for larger groups, this is a really good go-to. Okay, I have 2 more ideas, one in person, one virtual. So maybe we'll go with the in-person one next. I love doing silent check-ins on flip charts that have different types of questions on them. Usually there's one where people vote by either putting a sticker on a scale or in a box, and one more open-ended question. If I'm short on time, I might skip the open-ended question and just do something easy as voting on something with a sticky dot, or maybe just adding an X with a marker. In this case, this was a session around how to make meetings matter and create more meaningful meetings. And I asked a similar question I just asked you. What kinds of meetings do you lead? In person, remote, or hybrid? And people could put their sticker. The follow-up question I asked, what are your biggest challenges when you're running these meetings? Another example would be this. This was on a session on engagement. And I asked people on this scale of different emojis, how much do you usually engage as a participant, from hiding in the clouds to raising your hand and ready to speak? Again, gave me some insights about the group before we have even started the session, gave them something to do and put their sticker. And very quickly, they got into conversations with the people next to them without me necessarily saying that that's what they should be doing. One last version of this. Sometimes I like to put quotes on a wall and block certain words and just have people guess, like, what is hidden behind those papers, the words that I crossed out. And in this case, I used this for the beginning of a team retreat workshop, and I didn't reveal the solution until the end of the workshop. So we started with this, having them engage with the quote, and it only made sense after we went through the activities on that day. When I revealed it, I showed them the correct answer. So it was not a competition of like who can guess the correct answer, but more get them curious, thinking about this. Exactly. And the last one, which I think you've already shared in the chat, just asking a simple question for people to share in the chat as they're coming in. What made you sign up for the session? What's your intention for today's meeting, right? Similar to the ones that you already shared, we can engage our participants in the chat. And that's maybe the kind of lowest barrier. If you don't do anything, but just think of a question you could ask, then that's my invitation, my little challenge for you. So would love to know if there is one thing that either you saw me share, one thing that somebody else shared that you would apply in your next session. You can write it down for yourself. You can share it in the chat. You can unmute and let everybody else know, especially if you have a variation of something that maybe you've learned now that you would like to apply. And I give you a moment to do that. Let me find the link for you, Stefan. There you go, climber cards. Nice. And the other one that I shared were the We Engage cards that I think also have an online version. I don't think you can select your cards there, but at least people can flip through them by themselves. Okay. Reflecting quietly. Nice. A poll. Nice, Oriana. I think polls are also great because they're very easy for people to answer, right? If we're thinking of the risk, very small thing to just click a button, even smaller than writing out an answer. Laurie is asking, if AI were an animal, which animal would it be? Nice. Yeah, as long as you're not asking people to choose which animal they would be, I think that might qualify more as the typical icebreaker that people are asking. So what does that have to do with this session? I like the idea of naming an animal for AI. Very cool. Okay, I'm looking at the things that I still promised you we will do today. I still said we will do a little experiment at the end. Before we get there, I wanted to pause and see if there's any questions. Looks like no questions there yet. If there are coming up, please feel free to put them in the chat. Put up your hand. Happy to pause again. But in this case, I do need to ask you this, because for any experiment, of course, I need participants to opt in. So could you go to the chat and tell me how ready you feel to take a small risk on a scale from 1 to 5? 1 meaning not ready, 5 meaning all in. And all the numbers, of course, are valid. I just want to get a sense of where this group is at before we continue. Okay, I'm seeing all the numbers between 2 and 4.5. Okay. Follow-up question, as I'm seeing a lot of 3s in here that are somehow somewhere in the middle. This activity this activity will require you to unmute. So if you can unmute, that would be great. I still would love to go through it. Before we get to the activity, though, let's talk about risk and why am I even asking you to take a risk, right? We talked about earlier, why would you participate in an activity if you don't know why we're doing something? To me, a lot of the best meaningful sessions always require participants to take a small risk, because that is what stepping outside of their comfort zone looks like, and that is where the biggest learning will happen. If we want people to remember a session, it's usually the ones where they kind of were more courageous than they thought they would be. Does that sound like a true statement? I'm seeing some head nods. Again, feel free to use the reaction buttons, or like give me a thumbs down if you're like, no, I don't agree. People should never take risks in sessions. That's also okay. I don't know what exactly you're going to do in your sessions. But to me, I always think of this model that probably you've also seen before, with the comfort zone in the middle, or learning zone kind of just outside of that, but then also the panic zone on the very outside. Does that look familiar to anyone? If it does, can anybody explain to me what the panic zone is about in this model? I think comfort zone, I think we get. Learning zone is somewhere in the middle, and panic zone is at the outside. Hannah.
Sure. So yeah, I use this in some of my workshops, and the the panic zone is basically just like you are in fight or flight. You're not going to pay attention to anything. You're super uncomfortable, and you're not really going to be absorbing the material at hand.
Exactly. So as trainers, as facilitators, our goal is to create the environment where people are willing to step outside of their comfort zone, but we don't want to push them too far, right? Svetlana, do you have something to add?
Oh, I wanted that people won't have some small discomfort. It's more useful than you give them very big discomfort. They don't know what they will do. When they learn something and they have results, they are happy.
Mm-hmm.
I explain. You understand me?
Yeah, like it is about the smaller steps we're asking them to take.
Step by
Not
step.
such a big step.
Step by step from comfort zone.
Exactly.
Not very big steps. It's
Yeah.
very big discomfort for participants.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So my question for you is this: I'm getting a sense from this group that you're all quite experienced in what you do. So how do you know when somebody enters the panic zone? Nina says body language. Tell me more. What kind of body language?
If it's in person, I think you kind of sense it, but usually you get this moment where either the jaw tightens or the shoulders go up, or like you literally feel how they start holding their breath.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think holding their breath, shoulders going up, tight jaw. Belinda says they go silent, right? I think there's a few cues that we can pick up, especially in person. They withdraw or end up talking more than usual, but it feels like probing. Yeah, thank you, Lila. So when I think of designing how I want people to take risk, we already talked about this, the idea of step by step. I don't want that risk that they're taking to be such a big gap that they have to jump over it. That requires a lot of courage, but almost build a ramp where the steps are smaller, more manageable, that when we get to the end, they're willing to take it. And that's exactly what I would love to explore with you in this experiment. There's 3 rounds. Each round will kind of increase the risk that I'm asking you to take slightly. Like I promised at the beginning, if it works out, beautiful. We'll kind of have an example of the methodology. If it doesn't work, we'll learn something and we can kind of explore, well, what happened that made this not work in this case? So give me a quick feedback again if you are good to start our experiment. You can give me a thumbs up or a head nod or yes in the chat. You will need to use your mic for this because we are using one feature in Zoom that maybe you have not used in this way. So as a first step, can you go to the top right and click the little squares with the view options and select speaker view? Once you've done that, even if you have your camera off, you can do that. You should see that I'm now nice and big, kind of the same way as if I was spotlighting myself earlier. But now what happens whenever somebody unmutes and speaks, they will become the speaker in the speaker view. And for this activity, we're going to use that to our advantage because right now I'm in the spotlight, but this is actually really uncomfortable for me. This is getting quite hot. I did not put sunscreen. I'm actually going to start burning my skin of being in the spotlight for too long. And I need somebody to rescue me by simply saying the word hello or hi loud enough so it takes the spotlight away from me, but then it goes to them. And hopefully somebody else will rescue them and nobody will be in the spotlight for longer than a couple of seconds. So I'm going to see if anybody's willing to sacrifice themselves for just a second and grab the spotlight from me. And otherwise I have to keep talking.
Hi, Jan. Pleasure to make your acquaintance. How are you doing today?
Hello. How are you? Nice to meet you.
Hello. How's it going? Hello
Hi.
there. Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Hi. Love how it's gaining momentum.
Hello.
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 Hey, hello, hello. I'm gonna grab the spotlight back, but give yourselves a pat on your shoulder. Great job. I don't think anybody was in there long enough for the panic zone to set in, where we might have noticed something on their face. Where like, no, I'm out of here. This is too uncomfortable. Like I said, was our first round. We got used to how this works. And in a way, some of you have already taken an extra step of courage in this first round that we're going to focus on in the second one, which means in the second round, you have to say a little bit more than just say hi. You actually have to keep talking until somebody else interrupts you and rescues you. You can talk about anything you like in any language that you like. If you want to tell us what you had for breakfast, if you want to tell us what you're doing after this, if you want to tell us something you've learned already, all of those and anything else you can think of are valid options. And I'm now going to fill the time until somebody is going to, again, have the courage and interrupts me. It's totally okay to interrupt in this case. So don't feel fear to step on my toes.
Hello, Jan. I'm best when I talk about things that I have experienced. So what I will just share is last week I ran a workshop, and the icebreaker, the campfire exercise, was a name tag that people had when they walked into the meeting. And on the back, I asked them a simple thing about what did you learn as a very young person to do, and wove that into the workshop throughout the session, and just kept coming back.
Thank you, Melinda. I'm going to rescue you because I'm like, I really want to know your answer. And I feel like we're just attuned to not wanting to interrupt people. But in this game, you were getting very close to burning, which I am now again too. So I'm hoping somebody else might rescue me and just say a couple words. And if it doesn't,
when you started talking earlier about the fire side, or at least the campfire, I actually thought about instead of icebreaker, warm up like a sauna. And of course, you also do a cold plunge after a sauna too. So I really enjoyed the paralleling that was happening there for myself. And perhaps maybe it's better to call them warm-ups. Oh, get those muscles moving again, get ready for the session that's coming or this workshop, and
Let me
keep
rescue
going.
here. I have to say this is quite uncomfortable for me to just interrupt someone, but as part of the game, I'm going to do it. But it does take some courage, and it's not super comfortable for me. Yeah, I did it anyway, and it's an interesting
Jenny, you've just given me an idea that's made me think, wouldn't this be a good game? But maybe you have a sentence that you say as you come in, saying something like, oh, sorry to interrupt, but, and that's like the key sentence that runs every time somebody interrupts. I'm hoping somebody interrupts me very soon because I'm about to leave work. And I don't want to miss my train.
Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, I think that's the biggest realization. I don't have problem being in the spotlight, but I really have problem interrupting people while they are talking. That being said, feel free to do so.
I'm going to pause you right there, Lena, because I actually think that pausing people is way less charged than the word interrupt. One phrase that I learned from another facilitator many years ago, and I still use it today. And I'm just going to kind of pause us here because we've gone to the second stage of this experiment, and I would love to debrief quickly. What happened? Some of you have already shared while you were in the spotlight. But what was the difference between those two rounds? Anybody still willing to unmute?
I think the difference is that there was a lot of uncertainty because we didn't know like how long one person should speak, while saying just hello, nice to meet you feels pretty secure and safe. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. Anything
I would like
else?
to add that it was a lower commit at the start. We just had to take a second, and now we had to fill a few seconds, and that was already scarier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Jenny's saying in the second round, I actually wanted to know what we were saying, not so much for the hello. Yeah. And this happens all the time, that one person starts talking, they're saying something really interesting, and then nobody wants to interrupt. Trust was built when someone jumped in to relieve the other. Nice. So I'm in this strange position right now where there is a third layer of even more risk. But if I was working with you as a group right now, I probably would be hesitant to go to that last level based on what the information I've been collecting so far. So I actually would like to know what is something that we could have done to make the risk even smaller. Like in this previous round, if the risk of interrupting was too big, but it was bigger than just saying hello, is there like a middle step that we could have created?
Might have been interesting to, if the group knows one another and it's not too big, you can, okay, you call in the next person. Hi, my name is, and then you call in the next person to take the spotlight. And that way you can go around all the way.
Yeah, although I think that would then make people be on the spot. And I think one big part of this is that you have to choose to step into the spotlight.
Maybe setting up some limit, how long, like maximum one person will talk, would help people to feel more secure.
Right. And I also liked I forgot who said this, but I think having the phrase of how do you interrupt someone? Like if this was even related to the topic, like we're learning of how do we respectfully interrupt each other, that could have been a good practice round. Jenny also says kind of setting norms at the beginning. Giving a topic to talk about. Yeah. So thinking of this as one thing building to the next. Of course, I don't necessarily need you to do this activity in your sessions, but going back to the bigger risks that you ask people to take, sharing an opinion, sharing something vulnerable. I want you to think of what's a way you can build this as a ramp, like what are smaller things you can do before you have that big ask in your session. And one of my go-to structures is actually similar to a liberating structures, which I'm not sure if you already know about liberating structures. I have a sense that some of you might. That is called 1, 2, 4, all. But the idea is that when you ask a question, each person first answers the question by themselves. Like that's what the 1 stands for. After that, the 2 means I share my answer with a partner. In this case, the 4 means each pair partners up with another pair. So you bring your first partner with you, you create a group of 4 and you have a conversation. And only after that, we share with everyone in the main room or in the big group. And I very often use that as a structure of giving people time to think about their answer, sending them in a small group before I bring them back and then invite a few people to share in the main room. And the one thing that happens is, number 1, just answering a question by yourself, there isn't a lot of risk involved yet, right? I don't even have to, like my idea doesn't need to be good. Maybe I have no idea. Nobody will know. In a small group, there's a lower risk, but also a higher responsibility to contribute. Amy Edmondson, who coined the current term psychological safety, often talks about that even when people share in the relatively safer space of a breakout room or a smaller group, they get more confidence than to also share it in the main group, because now you should have thought about something you want to say by yourself. You have tested this with one person. Maybe you got some really good feedback. Now you're coming back to the main group. Like, you have an idea, it's validated. Of course, now maybe you're more likely to put up your hand and contribute, especially if you have people in your groups that usually aren't the ones who are always raising their hand, or it's always the same few people that raise their hand at the beginning. Like, I think that's maybe even more the case, which means we're only allowing the people who are starting to speak, and while they're speaking, they're finding their answer. Like, they raise their hand before they even know exactly what their thought is going to be. There's a lot of people who are on that side of the spectrum, and then on the other side, it's the people who really need to think about what they want to say, how they want to say it before they're raising their hand. And if we don't give them time to pause and find their answer, they will never get the chance to actually contribute. So it's this balance of different things, different strategies that allows all of those voices to come in. So there's one example of how you might apply this, where the biggest risk might be speaking in front of the whole group. So how can I get people there in a step-by-step format? I think this is almost close to where I would like to end. So I wanted to check in if there's any questions, if there's something specific that you would want to brainstorm on, like, hey, I do this thing in my trainings and it's super risky, or perceived risk is very high. What could we do to get there easier? Feel free to put those up. If you have any other questions, also put them in the chat or raise your hand.
I have a question, and sorry if you already mentioned at the very beginning. So let's say that I have a very limited time to organize a training. It's 60 minutes. What would be the best framework to make sure that I have time to build this security in a slow step by step, but still have enough time to for the main dynamics? I don't know if you have any advice for that.
Yeah. Normally I would ask, like, what's the topic, the theme, the purpose behind it, right? And we could find some specific activities, but just in general, what I just shared is something I would definitely apply. Making sure that there's time for people to think about their answer, giving them time to share something with a small group or a partner, and then as a third layer, then asking them to contribute in the main room. I think there should always be time for that, because the question could also slightly evolve with each round, right? Okay, you don't need to ask the same question 3 times, especially if you're tight on time, right? But that way, you're going to allow people to slowly ease into the idea of, I should be raising my hand and contribute.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Jenny, we have only 30 minutes for our company-wide meeting. The first few minutes is usually waiting. How would you incorporate your ideas without it being too long? Jenny, are you a person that helps run the meeting? Are you a participant in the meeting? Just so I guess get your involvement in this. Your HR. Okay, so you're not the person running the meeting, but you're part of the leadership team, I assuming. So you could theoretically run something. Is that right? Right. You want to improve the meeting culture. One tip that I always have, if you're not necessarily the person who creates the agenda, runs all the things, is asking the person who usually organizes it if they'd be open to an experiment. Similar to the way we did an experiment today, getting their okay to try something and see how it works. And then maybe if it's only 30 minutes, you don't have a lot of time. So maybe just asking a question, maybe doing a quick word cloud at the beginning that people can do from their phones. If they're online or if they're in person, they can scan the QR code. So you get all of the information in one place. Make it related to one of the topics in the session. So it feels like you're actually buying time. You're getting more information to make the meeting itself more useful, more productive, rather than something that people can say, oh, this is unrelated. I think that's the most important thing. Yeah, let me know if that resonates. Great. Okay. I told you that I've been writing this book. I'm going to share a link for anybody who wants to learn more about it. I'll also share a link for my cat camping video if anybody's interested, and a way to get a hold of me. So feel free to connect with me. I'm on LinkedIn most of the time, so that's probably the best place to find me. And otherwise, just send me an email, send me a message. Happy to, like, this is something I can literally talk for hours about and already have for the book. So putting all the links in one message so you can pick the one that resonates the most with you, of where you want to connect, or if you just want to watch the cat video. And with that, thank you everyone for participating, engaging. And Barbara, I think you have a couple more words before we say goodbye.
Yes, thank you so much, Jan, for the session. It was super engaging, and also thanks everyone that you're really so active and, you know, sharing your ideas and thoughts and being so brave in the experiment. I was, you know, impressed how well it worked. So I think that's it for the session. Soon you will be able to watch the recording if you want to go back to any of the things shared. And I hope to see you around during some other sessions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, same here. Thanks everyone. Have a great
Thank you.
week.